Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, marks of all ages, Retconners proudly brings you the NDO Podcast Champions of the World, Timothy Empire of Magnus Blakiki, Roger Brute Force of Springer Fisk, and I am your host, Mike, trying to make crime stick K. Welcome to a special edition of Sunday Night Smarkdown. Tonight we'll be marking out, or maybe not marking out, to Night of Champions. So what we're going to be doing tonight is just taking a look at the championship matches that were on the card. So, Tim, initial thoughts?
Initial thoughts. That was actually one of my favorite pay-per-views I've seen recently. The world didn't move, continents didn't necessarily shift, but that top to bottom was actually one of the more enjoyable cards I've seen in a while.
Roger, how about you?
I agree. This was a lot better than I thought it was going to turn out, because usually these Night of Champion matches, they're kind of more for, not really nostalgia, but just to, give it some kind of supercard feel, but it never comes out with a supercard feel. And this one didn't necessarily give you a supercard, but the matches were very solid, and I was very pleased with the performance tonight.
Fair enough, and I agree on the solid matches, but did you guys feel like there was really, a Match of the Year candidate here? Because I didn't feel like there was a really strong standout match tonight.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. It wasn't a Match of the Year, but they were just solid. They were well done, well entertained, and good psychology.
I agree. I actually kind of feel like I don't know, in a weird way, glad there wasn't necessarily a Match of the Year. I felt like things were more spread evenly amongst them. It seems like these pay-per-views in the past, it's up and down, up and down, up and down, and this was very even-keeled across the board.
Well, so speaking of even-keeled, let's go into our first championship match. We had Kevin Owens versus Ryback for the Intercontinental title. So, Roger, why don't you start us off? You're probably the biggest KO mark on the podcast.
Brother, I tell you, I was so looking forward to this because, I've been a Kevin Owens fan back when he was Kevin Steen, the ROH PWG promotions. So I was very excited when I saw that he was going after the Intercontinental title, and I was equally hopeful that he would win, and he did, and it was a great use. I mean, this was an old-school match because you saw him focus on the arm from the beginning throughout with Ryback, and this was a different style of match than he's had in the past with Cena or Cesaro. There weren't a lot of Owens' big moves, like the cannonball or, not even a pop-out powerbomb, but by focusing on the arm, you take away the big guy's strength and wrap it up nicely with a little schoolboy.
Timmy, thoughts?
I was a little surprised by the way this match was booked on this week's Sunday Night Smarkdown. When Raj and I reviewed the match, we kind of briefly glazed over this match, and I kind of discussed how I felt like this was a good opportunity to put the belt on Owens, but I felt like Owens, I kind of want Owens to become the Raw superstar. He has such a diabolical style that lends itself to week in, week out. The way he performed at TakeOver and then SummerSlam, he can obviously take the beating, and his style kind of week in, week out, it stays the same. He doesn't have necessarily a Raw persona as opposed to a pay-per-view persona. His style is his style. And so I kind of thought that this would be a good opportunity to let Ryback go over, maybe have a DQ ending, and then actually, because we haven't seen a good title change on a Raw in a while, maybe let that title change happen on a Raw and then let the rematch happen at the next pay-per-view. Maybe this could have been the DQ ending as opposed to the tag title, which we'll get to in a second. Just perpetuate the feud. I don't know really where the feud's going to go now. I'm okay with the way it went. Raj hit it on the head with it wasn't the typical Owens match. It could have been a little tighter. It could have been a little more. It just could have been a little bit more, but it is what it is. I don't particularly care for Ryback, so I'm happy with the result. And I hope Owens moves quickly out of this feud.
And it doesn't look like he's going to by that interview he cut afterwards. I actually feel like this is probably going to go into Hell in the Cell now. But going into this, I'm very torn on this match. It's like I'm a bigger Kevin Owens fan, but I see the value in Ryback. I feel like he's that strong man. He's going to be that big man, which I think that, you need in WWE. I think that not everybody can be Rollins, and it's good to have this big man there every once in a while. But the IC title seems to mean more to somebody at Ryback's level. And to me, Kevin Owens, I guess I'm still living in fantasy land where he beat Cena the first time and then didn't lose to him twice in a row. But I'm back there to where I almost feel like this was below Kevin Owens to be fighting for the Intercontinental title. I feel like Ryback could have done a long run with this and, kind of built himself up as that babyface while you got the heel Rollins as champion. And I feel like Kevin Owens would have done better going after the world title in some way, shape, or form. But it is what it is, and I guess we'll see where this leads to with Hell in a Cell. But I would be interested to see how Kevin Owens does in a Hell in a Cell environment. So let's go on to Dudley's versus the New Day. So, Tim, why don't you give us a little bit of background on this match?
Honest to goodness, there's actually not that much background other than the Dudleys spring up out of the blue without a little bit of fanfare. I was a little shocked by that when they re-debuted. They've been on, 3 or 4 Raws now. New Day is just on fire. Week in, week out, New Day is my favorite. As much of a Rollins mark as I am, they are my favorite thing that happens on Raw. When Big E ate a kazoo 2 weeks ago, my jaw dropped. I texted you guys. They are appointment television right now. Everything top to bottom. I know even I've heard people talk, kind of downplay Kofi's influence on this. I literally think all 3 of them bring something new to that tag team that nobody has seen in a long, long time. I'm so excited about them just going forwards. I can't even see them breaking up, which is almost the first thing you think about when you see a tag team really start to elevate. How are they going to break this tag team up? There's no need to break them up. They are just gold right now. I think it's just a simple Dudleys are going after the gold. They came back, however many time champion they are, they're going after whoever has the belts. It's fire on, recent return fire. It is what it is. The match was what it was. It kind of served its purpose. I hate to see that schmoz ending with, of course, the Dudleys at the end, getting their music playing at the end. It makes sense. I hate to see DQ endings on pay-per-view. It's very, very WCW-ish, but it makes sense in the course of the feud. I would have rather have seen maybe some Xavier Woods shenanigans lead to nonsense ending, but you got to kind of protect the Dudleys this soon into their return.
So the Dudleys come out on Raw, and I'm looking at the internet blow up, and I'm just sitting there going, I couldn't give 2 craps. I can't even put my finger on it, because for nostalgia purposes, like a Hulk Hogan, somebody like that comes back, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. He'll give somebody a rub, maybe put some people over, something like that, and I get the point of it. For the Dudleys, though, I guess because of watching Bubba and TNA this whole time, and not really being a huge Dudley fan back in the day either, it really didn't float my boat. So I'm just sitting here going, wow, we had some really cool feuds with these new tag teams like New Day. You've got all these other guys, up-and-comers, coming along. I feel like they could have done more with them. And I do see the purpose that they set, but I just can't put my finger on it, but it just is rubbing me the wrong way. But, I want to get Roger's side of the story here, because he does feel kind of that nostalgia for this.
I do, and they're coming off that horrible wrestling organization that was down south that's finally closing its doors. And
WCW closed down a few years ago. Sorry.
I'm sorry, the other organization down south. These guys, they have the old school, it's a nostalgic thing. Like you said, when Hogan comes back and stuff like that. And people, they're just excited to see the Dudleys because it brings back those feelings of, oh, these guys are hardcore. I mean, yeah, I know we don't do hardcore wrestling as much in this PG era, but this brings back feelings of that. So they can remember, oh, these guys were the guys that put people through tables. We're going to see violence. We're going to see stuff that we haven't seen in a long, long time. We may or may not get it, but it just brings back those feelings. And for this match, the Dudleys did a pretty good job. And, they were never a fast-moving tag team such as the Rockers or even the Young Bucks, if you want a more modern comparison. But they worked at a really good pace, and Bubba has gained some weight back, but he's still pretty good. He's still in pretty good shape comparatively, as is Devon. So I thought it was a really good match, and I understand, Tim, what you're saying. I hate that too. DQ finishes on pay-per-views, but it worked the purpose for the match. And like you said, play the music, put Woods through the table, and fans are happy with that. They just want to see Dudleys put people through tables.
Well, the rumor mill going around now is that we're going to see the Hardys come back next. And then,
really? I haven't seen that anywhere.
So there's some talk.
That, but I haven't believed it.
Well, it's always one of those things, believe when you see it, but when there's smoke, there's fire kind of thing, too. So it'd be interesting to see if the Hardys do come back. And then, I hear shortly thereafter is going to be, were they tag team champions or were they not? The Rockers. Please, go ahead.
No, they were champions.
Technically, they were not. Technically,
really? You want to play technicalities on this?
If there was a guy backstage whose name is Vince McMahon, and there is, he says the Rockers were not tag team champions because the match never aired. If the match never aired, they were not tag team champions. That's what the documentary said. I think
did somebody pin somebody 1, 2, 3, and the belts change hands? This wasn't out of country. This wasn't something that happened in Brazil. It happened. They were champions.
I'll agree with that statement. But in the records of WWE, the Hearts never lost the belts, though.
All right, fair enough. Let's move on to.
This is a completely manufactured argument before. Anyways, I completely agree that they're not recognized, but by God, Shawn was a multiple-time tag champion.
Let's say that. They're not recognized tag team champions. Okay.
This would legitimately be like, is Chris Jericho was his initial Triple H pin, not an actual title change. I get that it's not recognized, but by God, I don't care if there's a broken ring rope or whatnot. Like, they won, damn it.
You like how I threw that grenade out there?
I threw it. It's a hot take.
All right, on to our Divas match between Charlotte and Nikki. So on Raw, I think they had the marks thinking that they would actually switch the title at that point and not let her take AJ's, but I had little doubt in my mind that she was going to take the longest reigning Divas champion. Can
we not mention real quick how lucky they were the date, specifically fell on the date of the Raw?
Well, to be fair, anyone checked it.
Yeah, somebody has, and how lucky it really did. It really did. However the calendar falls, it specifically fell on that day. How lucky were they that it did that? Because their entire gimmick would have been screwed over had it not.
My thoughts, and I saw this as a prevalent theory online, was that you probably didn't know right down to the minute. I'm sure somebody online calculated it, but they can kind of change the time just like they do with the Rumble and everything else. That basically it would come down to 2 seconds. Charlotte would make the pin, she would get the win, but by 1 second, Nikki would have been the longest reigning Divas champion.
Yeah.
That was the most prevalent thing I saw. Well, so anyway, we see this on Raw. We see that Nikki just, kind of squeaks out the win, and we get this rematch here at Night of Champions. And, Roger, you want to tell us your thoughts on the match first?
I thought it was a really good match, and just like the Intercontinental title earlier in the evening, it was a really good use of ring psychology with Nikki working the leg. However, at the end, it didn't seem to make any sense because Nikki comes off, misses her move, and all of a sudden Charlotte puts on the figure eight like nothing happened. A more viable conclusion would have been if she put it on first, and maybe she fell through because the pain was in the leg, and maybe she goes through and guts it out again to get the figure eight on more successfully.
Yeah, Timmy, I know you have similar thoughts.
Yeah, boo. No. This match made no sense whatsoever. You were basically taking, all right, so there's a Divas revolution. Okay, I get that. There's not been a real revolution yet. What they're doing in NXT is an actual revolution. They are putting decent divas against decent divas, and honest to God, it pains me just to say the word divas anymore because I feel like that was a title placed on female wrestlers who could not wrestle and still wanted to encapsulate this sort of female presence, larger than life. It meant more then than it does now, but they've basically put not a real trademark, but a slight trademark on the word, and I hate that it applies anymore. And I love how they don't even use it in NXT. It's just the women's championship, which is what it should be. Nikki should be the last Divas championship because that's what she is. She is a female wrestler who epitomizes this diva's connotation on the word. She's not a women's championship. She's a good-looking female who just so happens to have enough athletic ability to actually encompass.
Hook up with John Cena.
Yeah, exactly. And well, I love this theory that Cena put the kibosh on Charlotte winning it as soon as she came up, because she should have. She absolutely should have. Nonetheless, this match just was a result of Nikki finally being in a match with somebody who could bump for her and stretch the way that somebody should in a women's championship match, not necessarily a Divas championship match. You guys keep calling it psychology. I just call it somebody being in a match. I actually would like to draw comparisons to the main event, except Sting exceeded my expectations, where you have somebody in there with such great ability and somebody in there with minor ability. If Charlotte had tried to pull the moves on Nikki that she would have with Sasha or Bayley or even Emma, Nikki would have broken it in half, because that's just not the sort of athlete she is. So they almost had to, I felt the entire match was a result of them having to protect Nikki, basically, and stretch Charlotte and stretch Charlotte and stretch Charlotte, because Nikki basically couldn't take the sort of bump that Charlotte would put her through, that Charlotte could have performed, that Becky Lynch could have performed, that Emma could have performed. So therefore, you got a very neutered match. The only thing and this is a far reach, but the best thing that I can really compare this to is that initial Lesnar versus Cena at Extreme Rules match, where Lesnar dominated most of the match. Cena got a little bit of a shine. Cena eventually went over with not selling anything, but got a chain shot in at the end. And I almost kind of felt like that's where it was. Like, the entire booking of the entire thing just aggravated the hell out of me. It should have been more even-keeled. It should have been a shining moment for Charlotte. But I almost felt like, because it was so like 75, 25, 85, 15% Nikki, that whenever Charlotte finally went over with a move that made no sense, because that's what Nikki had been working on the entire match with no selling at the end from Charlotte, the response that I think they were expecting and they'd been building to, and after 200 and something days, was just not what they were looking for.
And see, I think it's a combination thereof. So I think there's definitely a clash of styles when anybody from NXT comes up to the main roster. And you can see that they're not wrestling the same way. I think that you have the Divas Revolution, which has fallen flat on its face, because you're right. They're doing it in NXT, and whatever the hell is happening on Raw isn't that. So you're looking at this and you go, okay, so they're trying to make Nikki look strong, but she's going to drop the belt to Charlotte. So what do you do to make this thing work? And you're right. I don't think Nikki can work that style. I don't think any of the former divas can work that style. So you've got Charlotte and Becky, Paige, and Sasha, who are trying to make this thing work, and it's very difficult for them to do. Even when they wrestle each other, they've got to do a toned-down style. So I think they've gone in there and just go, okay, well, what can we do with each other that'll actually work? So they go, okay, let's a little old school, and let's try a little ring psychology. Now, it didn't come off very well, and the ending was just, again, where she should have said, okay, my leg should be hurting, so I need to kind of sell that a little bit. She didn't. And it was a very rushed ending, and that was a great comparison to the Lesnar match, because I think that's what they were doing, that Nikki was your beast, and she's the one who's, beating the crap out of Charlotte the whole time. And you got Charlotte, who's got to make that, really quick, I sneaked out a win to make Nikki still look strong. I don't think the Revolution has worked quite as well, but I will say that if you think about this, that was probably the longest match we've seen on TV. So at least somebody in the back's going, all right, let's give it a little bit of a chance. And then, two, that was probably one of the better Divas matches that we've seen on WWE TV. Not NXT, Absolutely. But on WWE TV.
I will agree with that.
And then the thing about Charlotte should have won as soon as she came up, I'm sorry, I'm not feeling Charlotte right now. Great wrestler, definitely. Where the hell did all the charisma go? I mean, her father is Ric friggin' Flair, and all she does is woo. That's the only thing she does that's even remotely charismatic, and she's got the little diamonds around her eye, and that's coming off as a little charismatic. But other than that, she shows no charisma when she speaks or when she's in the ring with somebody. I'm a little disappointed at that. I mean,
Now,
to me,
did you see her in NXT, though? Like, do you think there's just a disconnect between who she was in NXT and now?
No, because I don't feel she was that charismatic in NXT. I think she was more comfortable maybe in NXT, so she spoke a little bit more and had a little bit more emotion. But in general, if you compare her to Ric Flair, and I know that's not a fair comparison because Ric Flair is Ric Flair, but I mean, she just, put her next to Sasha. Sasha's oozing charisma. And you put her next to Charlotte, and Charlotte just falls flat. And you could see that in the promo backstage, even with Flair. Which, by the way, there was no point in that happening. Now, I think it was much more emotional when she won her first NXT title against Natty. That one, okay, when Flair came up, gave her the hug, that looked like, I don't know, more legit. This one kind of felt a little, like, forced to have Flair out there and everybody's hugging. I would have much preferred Paige lifts her arm up, gives her a big clothesline, and says, you know what, that should have been my title. And then you've got a real Divas Revolution going.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
That's true. It could happen on Raw tomorrow. Hopefully that will happen, too. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Rollins Cena. Tim, what are your initial thoughts on that?
It was what it was. I was super disappointed. I love the idea of Rollins having both of those belts. I struggle to see going forwards what's the point in having Cena with that. I feel like that could have been the end of that, and Cena could have moved on, feuded with somebody else, maybe gone back into a feud with Cesaro, gone back into a feud with, I don't know, XYZ. Rollins could have continued this idea of being, quote-unquote, the future, having both belts. Again, I miss titles changing on Raw. I would have loved to have seen Rollins eventually lose that on Raw to somebody. And, you know, even if it was just Neville and putting Neville over, it goes back to Cena. It is what it is. The match itself was solid. It wasn't as good as last pay-per-view's match was. I feel like Rollins just, again, is outshining everybody, including Owens, including Neville, including everybody on the card with his matches. He shows a strength in the ring that is unrivaled. He shows a psychology, and I don't necessarily mean like working over a body part as much as how he performs moves and then finishes them. The flow of the match. It's very Shawn. It's very HBK. It is I will sell just as hard for you, but I'm going to make my moves look absolutely devastating wherever I perform them, and he's just big enough to do that. I just, hands down, Rollins is the best thing going right now. The ending of the match was a little awkward also, how I felt like Cena, Raj, you kind of put it best, where like you acted like he was kind of nosy. Like, well, what on earth are you doing performing this random AA on the outside of the ring just to sell it a little bit more? It performed what it was supposed to do. It no longer makes sense to me now why they did the switch at SummerSlam unless they continue to promote him as a two-time title holder going forward.
Excuse me. I don't know if you guys caught it, but I'm sorry, Raj. I don't know if you guys caught it, but did you hear them say, oh, he's trying to catch up to Flair on this title too, or something like that?
Oh, yeah. I can't remember. HBO made a comment on that, because I think Flair held it like 6 times, and this just seemed to sit. And JBO just kind of made an offhanded comment, oh, he's trying to catch up to Flair.
Yeah, they're both now six-time U.S. title holders.
So, Raj, what are your thoughts?
Really random, but
yeah. I thought it was a good, solid match. Also, agreed. It wasn't quite as good as the SummerSlam one, but it was still a pretty good match. I was actually kind of surprised when it only took one AA to put Rollins down instead of the usual 3 or 5 that you usually have to put down on an opponent of his level. And I absolutely agree. This, when he first came in as the Shield, who would ever thought, when you see this guy that, yes, someday he'll be the future world champion. He will be the man. He will be the face carrying this title and the WWE. It's like when you go back and watch old videos of the Rockers, would you ever expect this flashy kid named Shawn Michaels becoming the legend that he became?
Yes,
I did.
Oh, excuse me.
Hey, but to Roger's point, yeah, who would have expected that Reigns and Ambrose are mid-card jobbing to the Wyatts still, while he's main eventing not 1 but 2 matches on a pay-per-view?
him doing a
I kind of saw it back in the day just because I saw the comparisons to Shawn, but I get the point that you guys are making, especially with the way Ambrose was kind of initially pushed as that like Stone Cold alternative, and Reigns was just supposedly destined for the gold.
Thank goodness that didn't happen.
Yeah.
That would have been an awful Mania.
So do you think this match was not as good not as good as last month, because he knew he had a second match coming up, so they had to hold back a little bit?
I don't necessarily think that. I think it had more to do with I don't necessarily think Cena. I think it had more to do with Cena rather than Rollins. Like I think Rollins puts out for everybody, but I almost feel like Cena being second on the card, it was almost like he was going through the motion. And I'm not necessarily saying that Cena was cognizant of that and therefore wasn't putting in as much effort. I just think that's who Cena is. I think that he's just the sort of person, and I felt like Rollins, so maybe it was Rollins' fault. Like maybe because Rollins knew he had to go as long as he had to, he wasn't pushing Cena to go as far as he had to. I will maintain till the end of my days that Cena only puts in as much effort as he has to. And because Rollins wasn't necessarily pushing for a better match, I don't necessarily feel like Cena was able-bodied to push as far as he could have.
I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, because he had the, the West Newbury Destroyer. I mean, he pulled out some good moves tonight, man. It was...
No, that move is not on Cena, though. That move is 100% Rollins, just as much as it was for the dude in TNA. That move is not the person performing the move. It's the person taking the move that actually performs the move. I have such issues with that move because there's no logical explanation for how the person who supposedly is making the move actually performs it. It's completely the person taking the move who's making the effort for it, and it's very obvious. So anybody who doesn't know that wrestling is fake and sees that move has to look at that move and go, wait, that move makes no sense.
There's a lot of moves in professional wrestling that are really like that. If you go watch an amateur match versus professional wrestling, though, Timmy, I mean, come on.
Yeah, but that's probably one of the most egregious.
Well, be that as it may, I'm just saying, I think last month, because it was SummerSlam and because it was both titles, it was titles.
Exactly.
Title at the time.
Exactly.
I think there was probably more, there was more anticipation of that, because here we are thinking, oh, this is Cena, he wins everything, he's Superman, and for Rollins to actually come out to win, that was really cool. And with this one, there wasn't quite that anticipation, because it could have gone either way, because we still knew that he had the match to go with Sting.
All right, so speaking of the match with Sting, what did you guys think about this? Tim, you were overly impressed.
Right up till apparently, and I'm sure this is going to get spun a certain way, right up till Sting apparently shattered his clavicle or shoulder blade or something on that second ridiculous power bomb to the turnbuckle, I was shocked at how well Sting was bumping. The poor man is 56 years old. At Mania against Triple H, it seemed like the overbooking of the match was specifically designed to hide Sting, which I was completely comfortable with. Even the match on Raw, I felt like it was a quick match that turned into a tag match specifically to hide Sting. So for him to take a random, it was a belly-to-belly to the Spanish announce table. Is that what it was?
No, he just pushed him and he fell back.
Okay, push him. Okay, I apologize. Which still, I made the quick comment that, honest to goodness, is probably one of the worst bumps we've ever seen by somebody that old, not named Vince or Mae Young. I mean, he was bumping all around the ring for Rollins, which
absolutely
I wasn't expecting. I was expecting basically what we got in the Divas match, lots of rest holds, maybe a few suplexes. I just was not expecting this, especially because the Cena match ended, I think, my time at 10:25. The actual start time of the Sting Rollins match was at 10:30. These pay-per-views have been running super long, so I thought maybe they were going to give this match like 20 minutes. It ended up finishing in like 14 minutes, which I'm assuming was because of the injury. And again, I'm assuming that injury on the second turnbuckle powerbomb. I was super impressed literally right up to the finish. The trainer, quote unquote, that got into the ring, I don't know, he kind of looked like an independent wrestler to me, so I don't know if that was an actual, I don't know if they were trying to protect Sting on that, like this was their sad attempt at protecting Sting. The ending of it was super awkward to me. Super, super awkward to me. And maybe it's because Sting literally can't take a pedigree. I mean, that's a possibility that I haven't seen out there yet, just on checking the internet right before we did the podcast. I don't know.
Or you mean at this time he couldn't take the pedigree?
Yeah, that's what I mean, literally at this moment. Like maybe something has happened. I don't know. It seems weird. Now, don't get me wrong. I have no problem, just as I said on this last week's podcast, I have no problem with Sting jobbing. He has no place in today's WWE other than to put over talent. If he's in 10 matches, he should job in all 10 matches, as far as I'm concerned. I'm okay with the finish. I'm just a little confused by the finish. And I hope this feud just ends right now.
Roger?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty solid, too, for a 56-year-old, and it was a lot better than I was expecting to. We've only seen him in one-on-one encounter, and that was at Mania, and that was back in April, I believe. And, you know, it was like you said, it was overbooking, but damn it, was it a lot of fun to see NWO and DX come out. But with this one, you know, Rollins was down already, and Sting, you know, he knew what pace he had to take. And he took the bumps that he knew that he could take. I mean, the guy flew off the top rope too, and he hasn't done that in who knows how long. And this is a 56-year-old body taking those kind of moves, taking those kind of bumps. I'm equally confused with the finish. You may be right. It does make all the sense in the world that perhaps maybe he was legit hurt and they just had to wrap him up real quick. But it also allowed for a lot of time to throw the after activity stuff with Kane and Sheamus and all that.
Okay, so first side thought. We keep saying, this 56-year-old guy. How old was Flair when he was still knocking out of the park wrestling? Like when he was still doing good matches? Like how old was he for his final match with Shawn? Well, not real final match, but final WWE match. Do you know, Roger?
Not the top of my head, but he was probably right around 60.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
No,
so, I mean,
he was younger than that. He would be about Sting's age, but he was not taking these.
He's older than Sting.
He is older than Sting, but at the time in 2000, what was that? 2000. You guys were there.
Well, that's
2005, 2006.
So that was
no. That was 2004. That was WrestleMania 24.
24, excuse me. So
that was 2008, 2009.
We're at, what did we just finish, 31?
Yeah, so that was 6-7 years ago.
Wow.
That was WrestleMania 24. This is amazing podcasting right now. But the point being is he still wasn't taking those bumps. Shawn protected him during that entire match. I mean, Sting was throwing himself around there, which I was super impressed by.
That's debatable if he wasn't taking. I mean, he wasn't taking like off the top rope, and he didn't go through a table or something like that. But Flair
but look at this. I mean, what's Taker at? Taker's at like 51, and Taker's blown up a few seconds into a match, whereas Sting is taking bumps. Taker gets concussed by a move we saw Nikki do to Charlotte, basically on the outside of the ring, where Charlotte throws a kick, Nikki catches it and pushes her down. I mean, and albeit Taker's larger, I know larger bodies take bumps differently, and the abuse that Taker has taken throughout the year, having a larger frame, but Sting was moving for a while. Whether this like second turnbuckle powerbomb like actually messed him up or not, like I feel like it did play a factor into it. I felt like the ref, I would be interested in seeing if anybody else noticed this, but the ref constantly kept reaching into his back pocket. And I felt like it was maybe a communication issue, like he was messing with a microphone or like trying to communicate with the back. I don't know, but something I felt like happened during the end of that match.
Okay, so Flair was inducted in 2008. Was that the first time in the Hall of Fame? Was that when he had the match with Shawn? Was it that same year?
Yes, that sounds right.
Okay, so he was 59, just to throw it out there. So you're right, it wasn't very far off, but I don't think Undertaker's a very good comparison because Taker's strange. You know, sometimes he can pull out still a decent match, and other times he's just horrific, and I think it's his dance partner more than anybody. Flair, I always thought, is a much closer comparison to Sting in all ways, shape, or form, just because of their history together, how they wrestle. They were really two sides of the same coin. So that's why I made the comparison to Flair. Growing up, I was just never a Sting fan. From the blonde-haired nonsense he used to do to the rafters, which just annoyed the hell out of me because I was a big NWO fan. You know, wearing my little Oakleys going, I hate Sting. Just watching this, it bored the hell out of me. And and granted, I will be the first to say, yeah, he did exceed my expectations on what he was going to be able to do, especially after the blow-up fest he had with Triple H. But it's still, I'm not sure this is his place on the card. I'm not sure this is where he needs to be, nor do I think there was enough fanfare to build this up. But maybe it was because he wasn't going to win the title. I hope he's not too hurt, to be 100% honest, because that would be a shame. But I really do think something happened there at the end because it was too awkward not to be something legitimately happened. But I guess we'll find out tomorrow night on Raw. So let's talk a little bit about what happened afterwards. I was the first to call for it, to say I think Sheamus is going to run out. Just storyline-wise, it makes 100% sense. The guys wrestled 2 matches, especially when they did the matches back-to-back. It just makes sense by the storyline to go, oh, my God, this guy just wrestled 2 matches. Let me go out and cash in and beat him for the world title. Well, great, and I'm actually very happy Sheamus didn't win, but then Kane comes out looking all fat in his little mask, and I guess that's going to be our next feud for Rollins. So what do we think about this? Good, bad, and different?
Wait. What do you think is going to be the next feud for Rollins, Sheamus or Kane?
Kane.
Oh, see, I actually more feel like Kane came back as a face and is going to be the next feud for Sheamus.
No, supposedly they built it up, and I don't remember this exactly, but when he had his ankle shattered, then Rollins...
No, I remember that. But I almost feel like he slighted Sheamus more than he slighted Rollins. I almost feel like he got his revenge on Rollins by the chokeslam tonight. But the feud that got started was with Sheamus, which in the long-term booking actually makes more sense because Kane is the old guard, and now Sheamus, theoretically, in a feud with Kane, will go over Kane in the long run, I think.
Dollars to donuts, Kane's going to beat Sheamus tomorrow night on Raw, and then he's going to go into Hell in a Cell, which would make sense with just Kane being Kane, and take on Rollins.
Oh, God, that actually does make sense, and that petrifies the hell out of me. It was the one thing that was nice was to see it was nice to see Kane come back in like his actual ring gear as opposed to corporate Kane.
I think I'm one of the people that dug corporate Kane. I just not how it came out, to be 100% honest, because the lackey thing could have been done better. But I kind of dug Kane just doing something so different with his character.
No, I agree with the evolution of his character. I'm just saying that it was nice to see him. I thought week in, week out, seeing him wrestle in legitimate business pants and nothing else was very awkward. I just liked seeing him in his mask, like in as pudgy as he did look, which God bless him. I mean, the guy is however old he is. Let him gain a little bit of weight, but you should not have stuck him. They should have come up with new ring gear for him, like looser fitting ring gear, but let him have one last little run as the monster.
You're going to like the way Kane looks. I guarantee it.
If you wanted Rollins to be the new Shawn, what better way to have him bump like Shawn for Taker and Hell in a Cell like we reviewed a few weeks ago? If this is what it's going to come to.
So Rollins...
I can definitely see Kane coming back as a face and doing that. And honestly, it wouldn't be a bad call to have him do that for a 1-month feud, go into a cell with Kane, beat Kane in the cell, again, cement that sort of, have that be another feather in his cap that I want a Hell in a Cell in a cage, et cetera, et cetera. But
and if you recall, this is Hell in a Cell is where Kane himself actually debuted.
It is, but
match.
It's not the match that he's known for,
So if Rollins is our second coming of HBK, who would be the second coming of Brett to feud with him?
Oh, Jesus. What a great question.
You have to give me a minute to think about that. I was probably going to say maybe John Cena, because, he's your uber babyface who wants to be the hero. He's just not as whiny.
No, but that's actually a fairly good comparison, because I compared Cena much more to a Hulk Hogan, and still with the 80s gimmick, basically. But I could definitely see that, because your Bret Hart is still in that kind of vein of these, super do-gooder type people. So that could be interesting if that's how they kind of build it up. My only thought is that Cena really is, in comparison to Rollins, like the veteran. You know what I mean? So I think it would be better if we could find somebody eventually that would be kind of just on par with him in terms of age and experience.
So, no, absolutely. So in that context, would it not be Ambrose, even though he has more of a Stone Cold gimmick? Would that not?
They made Roman Reigns.
But Reigns just kind of encapsulates something different, whereas Ambrose still handles the actual in-ring ability. He's definitely got the 5 moves of doom. I swear to God, if I see him do that, bounce through the ropes and come back with a clothesline thing one more time, I'm going to lose my shit. But I feel like
I love
that's
that he varies it up,
example. Yeah, but I feel like that's the example of somebody who's come up with him. He's played the babyface for a while now, and obviously Ambrose is not turning heel anytime soon. He's got the fans behind him. I mean, for the love of God, he's the titty master. I mean, he's got the support.
We got to start that chant at a Raw or a pay-per-view or something.
I'm sure it gets started, and I bet it gets edited out.
Can we get tape for Rick's riffs and just write it on there? I don't know. We can do it for the show or something. I don't know. I just want to see Rick wear it.
He'd wear it.
Real quick before we polish this off, and I know this wasn't necessarily on our docket of cards to talk about, but did Jericho doing what he did do anything for anybody?
No.
It was cool to see him, but yeah, he didn't. Well, he did what he needed to be done, be the veteran to job to the guys, and he went on his way. The crowd.
Do you not think the ending of the match almost was a prelude, possibly, to a feud? Though I almost felt like it. I really.
I feel like Jericho now. I think Jericho did one of his one-time appearances and was just like, "Hey, I'm here," and I think he'll be gone tomorrow. Or maybe he'll show up on Raw or something like that. And maybe he'll beat one of the underlings and it'll be over with. I don't feel like this will get dragged out. And if it does, maybe it'll go to Hell in a Cell. Jericho will do his little stint. And I love Jericho. I really do. It just felt weirdly out of place. And I'm glad you guys reminded me that he did have this little feud with Wyatt. But it just feels awkward where Wyatt is now and where this feud is. And kind of, I guess because I picture Ambrose and Reigns kind of as this dark and kind of gringy kind of thing.
Exactly.
And then here comes Jericho with his nice light-up jacket. And it just didn't make sense to me for him to be teaming with them. So it's kind of
all the guys that they would call and say, "Oh, it only took one phone call." Really, this is the guy that would pick up the phone. This is the guy that you would call. It actually would make more sense.
Doesn't that make sense? But that actually, in the long run, as soon as I heard his music, it was almost like I slapped my forehead and be like, "No, duh, that makes the most amount of sense." I called for Samoa Joe. People have been calling for Rowan, who, once I did the math on the injury Rowan had, it makes no sense for him to come back. He's still going to be out for months with that injury he had. But, I mean, think about it. Tough Enough just ended. He's still got a friendly contact with the WWE. His last feud was with Wyatt. It makes perfect sense for a some-timer to come in and do that. I do actually think it makes no sense for the ending of that match to happen the way it did. especially, and the reason I say this is especially with the way that Reigns had whoever it was in the ring almost beat, and then Jericho tagged in very forcibly and then lost the match and then ended the match the way it did. I feel like maybe Ambrose could feud with him, assuming Reigns moves in on. I mean, and maybe even Reigns feuds with him. Like, that makes sense for maybe one more pay-per-view, have Jericho come in, feud for a minute, because that's basically what he's doing. He comes in for a pay-per-view or two and then moves on.
Yeah, I stand corrected. I totally forgot about the very ending of that match where they kind of, had that little not scuffle, but little thing there. So, actually, yeah, I could see him doing something, and I'd love to actually see him and Ambrose just get on the mics together. That might be kind of fun.
So what do you guys see for Raw?
Really
what do you guys see for Raw tomorrow, real quick?
Maybe Rollins gets his new statue. I don't see Sting coming out, especially, there's no reports yet, but especially if the injury is legit, I don't see Sting coming out, but perhaps it'll kick off the next feud, maybe either with Cena again. He could probably say, hey, let's do this one more time, or let's do this proper.
I could see Sheamus.
Oh, sorry, sir. Go ahead.
I could see Sheamus coming out, jobbing to Kane. I could see some kind of confrontation where the Authority comes out, and you've got Kane, who, was Authority before he left, and then got Rollins. They have to have some type of confrontation. I see Cena bringing back the U.S. Challenge gimmick. And you know what might be kind of nice? He brings it back for one night, and whoever comes out beats him. Whether it be Cesaro, or they bring somebody else up. And then
that would be cool.
Yeah, just to get it off him now, and then he's done with the U.S. title for a little bit. But at least it's been keeping him busy. I see Kevin Owens and Ryback doing something again, just because he had that little post-match interview where he talked about the Goofy book. And I think that's the majority of what we're going to see.
All right, but by the way,
you were marking out about?
I'm so sorry. I'm not even marking out about this, but, how weird was it that we are announcing Taker and Lesnar at Hell in a Cell in a random throwaway, which the first match will be a focus of a future Sunday Night SmackDown, mark your calendars, on a random video package as opposed to something on Raw or even having somebody, Heyman. I mean, Heyman's appearance fee can't be that expensive that you couldn't have had him come out in the middle of this pay-per-view and announce this match. Oh my God, I still can't wrap my head around a random throwaway video package announcing this match.
I think they're probably utilizing the network because this was another free month of the WWE.
They're all free at this point.
Well, yeah,
I know, right?
That's why I say it's another. But this was to, you got to stay on the network so you can watch Hell in a Cell, and that's why they were using it to promote everything to get the people who are watching it for free.
But to Tim's point, it was a random video rather than either maybe a Taker Brock face down, at this pay-per-view, or even Heyman coming out. Like Tim said, it was very random. It was very if you missed that 2-second promo and you were like, oh, it's just a random promo that's going on, you would have missed the whole thing.
Well, I'll show you. You got to pay attention.
No, but when I saw that, I didn't necessarily watch Raw last week. It was on in the background. I'm in the process of moving, so I had it on mute. I'm on Craigslist. I'm doing this. I'm packing stuff. I just had it on mute in the background, but I'm watching it. And so as soon as I saw that video package, I legitimately was texting you guys, did I miss something? Have I seriously just completely been so deaf to the IWC that I just completely missed this week? And then they go back to the announcers and they're acting like, oh my God, this is earth-shattering news. I can't believe that theoretically, just like Mike was saying last month, that the rubber band match, we were talking about this possibly happening at Mania next year. The rubber band match is now happening next month. And they announced it in a pre-filmed, pre-voice-acted Paul Heyman video package. Like, what an underwhelming way to sell what is obviously going to be your main event next month.
To me, the first thing that popped up was the WrestleMania parts, and to say, okay, they're not going to save this for Mania, so that means what in the heck do they have planned for Taker next year?
That I almost feel like it was a way to, like, release him from commitment. Like, not necessarily the fact that he's not going to be there, because I'm just assuming he's going to be there, but it was a way to get Lesnar off of his docket. I'm not necessarily saying, you know, that this will be the end of the feud, which it should be. I hope to God it is, which since Taker has basically been playing heel, I still feel like this dynamic is just completely confused and I don't get it. But now this opens up Taker for Dane, Cena. I don't know, but whatever happens at Mania, now Lesnar is off the table.
And I agree with that because you had this weird dynamic where neither one of them was really playing face or heel. It was kind of like a tweeners, we're just going to beat each other up type deal. And this at least gets, like you said, gets it off the docket. He can go back to being a face, and if he really does get inducted in the Hall of Fame, he could have a retirement match, which I've heard that it would probably end up being Cena, because that's the one big match that nobody's ever seen before. Well,
now, have you also seen, though, that maybe that won't be his last match?
I have seen that. I've seen that because, you know, he had such a good time rolling around with Bray last year that he'll be fine to work a few more of these.
Oh my God! What are they doing though? Like, when is this going to end? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Well,
if Vince, honest to God, looked at him 2 years ago, well, a year and a half ago at this point in New Orleans, and looked at him and went, "Holy crap, this guy looks like hell. We need to take his streak away from him." Which, I mean, that's the only explanation of why he gave Lesnar the victory right there. Because Lesnar didn't need the victory. Lesnar was over. He could have absorbed the loss. They could have let the streak kept going. The only explanation of that was Vince having the wherewithal in his head to say, Taker can't keep going.
So,
to
Tim, I got
give him that loss.
You're using too much logic. You have to go no further than look across the phone to Mr. Fisk here. Fisk, why do they keep bringing back Undertaker?
Because he sells WrestleMania. He sells nostalgia. People love
he doesn't anymore. The streak's over. It no longer makes sense.
No, Tim. So you missed the second part. He's selling the nostalgia. So Roger marks out every time Taker comes out. He loves the lights flickering and the 1980s stuff where, you know, he drifted by, who was it, Jon Stewart and all them last time. Roger and a lot of people really enjoy that. You and I are just too bitter about this whole thing to really say that, but that's what's really going on, because if you think about it, Taker really is 51. Granted, he looks like crap, but you got Sting, who wrestled at 56. You got Flair, who went to 59 plus. He can still go, just not very well. You know, he lives the gimmick rather than actually wrestling. So that's what you're looking at there.
Yeah, you're all right. And it continues to sell, and we'll see, I suppose, next month. It shocks me that he's going to be on a non-major pay-per-view, which, if nothing else, this is an indictment on having Hell in a Cell as an actual pay-per-view. If they stripped this pay-per-view and called it anything else other than Hell in a Cell, and just had a random pay-per-view, and then had them do this exact same match, but in a Hell in a Cell, at Survivor Series, at Royal Rumble, at, you know, one of the major pay-per-views, I would buy it a little bit more. I'm a little shocked this is happening at a very random, you know, October pay-per-view. Damn it, I want Halloween Havoc back.
Me too, Tim. Me too.
I agree with you there, but sure, the pay-per-view itself is a throwaway pay-per-view, but this is more about the match than it is about the name of the pay-per-view. I mean, these Hell in a Cell matches are career makers, and they're just specialty matches in and of themselves that you only see once a year.
Yeah, are they anymore, though, once you see CM Punk and Ryback fight in one? Like, are they career-making anymore, though?
I feel like it killed it when you made a pay-per-view revolve around it. I felt like it was a much better tool to use when your feud just got too big to contain and you had to put it in Hell in a Cell. So you look at like Foley Triple H. And now it's like, oh, we're at Hell in a Cell. Well, what matches can we put in it? And it's the same thing kind of with Money in the Bank. It's like, we're here at Money in the Bank, so who do we want to put in it? As opposed to there being like a culmination of feuding.
So going forward, what matches next month are they going to have in the Hell in a Cell other than Taker and Lesnar?
I'll bet you the Reigns, Ambrose, Wyatts are in there in some way, shape, or form. I'll bet you that Kane and Rollins are in there. And that may be the only two, because don't they just do two now?
Yeah, so it's only going to be Lesnar. It's going to be Lesnar, Taker, and any one of those other two guys. Most likely it'll be Lesnar, Taker, and Rollins versus opponent.
And I already forgot that Lesnar and Taker were actually going to fight in it. So, yeah, that'll definitely be one. So probably Kane Rollins would be the only other one. I'd love to see, and what I was thinking tonight is you have, as I keep forgetting the redhead Wyatt's name. What is the dude's name?
Rowan.
So I was thinking, okay, Rowan comes back tonight. He turns on him. You got 4 on one side. Now, Reigns and Ambrose got to find 2 more people. So they get 2 more people, and then you've got War Games, more or less, in Hell in a Cell, which would have been fun. But nonetheless, that never happened.
War Games.
I know. We had this discussion last time, too.
Yeah, I know.
So just an amusing note, because I've been staring at Ric Flair's wiki ever since I was going back trying to figure out how old he was when he wrestled his last match. So his spouses, and I don't know how accurate this is, it just amuses me. We have Leslie Goodman from 1971 to 1983. Then it says he got married again in 1983 to Elizabeth Flair, doesn't use her maiden name, all the way to 2006. Then 2006, he decides he's going to marry Tiffany Van DeMark, is how you pronounce her name, and he's married to her until 2009. And then in 2009, he marries Jackie B. So Flair didn't wait very long on any of his marriages, if this is correct.
That's correct, and Beth is the one that's the mother of his children. So that's,
all of them?
Charlotte's mom and David's mom, and best of my knowledge, yeah, because that was his longest marriage.
Well, it actually looks like, at least because David Flair was born in 1979, it looks like that would have been Leslie Goodman. And Elizabeth would have had the other 3. I mean, I'm just taking a guess here by the dates, but nonetheless. All right, well, thank you guys so much. Thanks to Tim and to Roger both for being on the podcast with us tonight. Everybody out there, thanks for listening. We're the Retconners, where the information is true until we get retconned.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.